Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. Judge Joseph K. Wood is a foundling. Abandoned as a newborn on the streets of Chicago, he would later be adopted by St. Vincent's Orphanage. Joseph became a teen leader in the tough neighborhood of Jeffrey Manor. Since then, he's held key leadership positions as a bank examiner with the Illinois Commissioner of Banks, assistant director with the University of Chicago Booth School, head of recruitment at Walmart International, and Deputy Secretary of State for Arkansas Secretary of State Office. He's an elected official and currently serves in Arkansas as the Washington County Judge. He's also a 2017 Angels in Adoption honoree, recognized by the Congressional Coalition on Adoption, which raises awareness about orphans and foster children in need of loving families. He lives in Fayetteville, Arkansas with his wife June. And joining us now to talk about his book, Adopting Joey, is Judge Joseph K. Wood. Joseph, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you, Rabbi Walker. Good to be here. And to all your listeners, glad to be here. Glad to be joining you.
Well, your story is such a compelling one. We have these laws which allow for the safe placement of a child at a church or at a hospital or a police station without any recrimination for the mother. It allows them the opportunity that they've come to a decision that they brought a baby to full term, but they just don't have the ability to take care of it. And so you were one of those children who was on that side of that equation, praising God that you weren't aborted.
That's exactly right.
As that was the only other option that would have been available for this birth mother.
Yes.
You were in an orphanage, so you and I go back to the days when we had places called orphanages.
Yep.
I don't think they have orphanages anymore, do they?
No. The one that I came out of, St. Vincent's Orphanage, closed in 72, 73. And that's because across the country, the Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Children and Family Services pretty much took on that function. Now, the place still exists downtown Chicago. It's now Catholic Charities, and they still do a lot of work with feeding the homeless and working with the community and women who are having issues, but they don't have the actual orphanage there, but they still serve the city of Chicago, the Chicago and its proper areas.
So basically when DHS came in, they became the foster care overseers, and the old world of the orphanages disappeared from the face of American cities.
That's correct. That's pretty much how it occurred.
In your experience, what was it like? What were the struggles that you had? Because you've obviously achieved a great deal, and from as humble beginnings as you could possibly have, there had to have been some great influencers. I would love to say everything was self-motivated and you made all these wise decisions at 4, 5, and 6 years old, and you had a Filofax and a Rolodex and all that laid out. But that wasn't the case, was it?
No. In the first book, Saving Joy, it really I kind of lay out that groundwork of, again, being left in the streets in Chicago and snow and ice, and a guy's going to work, Caesar Johnson, and he sees this box with a blanket and didn't know what it was. He takes his foot to move the blanket, and the blanket moves. He sees a kid in there, and he carefully takes the box, goes back in, wakes his family up, wakes his neighbors up. A few hours later, they got the police there searching the neighborhood, trying to figure out where this kid came from. And they told him, hey, you saved this kid. He would have died in the freezer, and it was about 8 degrees out there. But the second book talks about the people who came and got me. They had been married for about 5 years and really wanted kids in the worst kind of way. And After 5 years, no kids, my mother said, let's go and get a girl out of the orphanage. And my dad was happy to oblige. And they get there and they see this little boy, said, no, let's foster care this kid. And so they foster cared me for about 10 years, back and forth and dealing with the nuns and all that. And at 10 years, they adopted me. So I was back and forth in the orphanage there for about 10 years under the foster care process. But the challenges you talk about, in particular, um, high school. So again, they had been married 5 years, no kids, and no sooner than they started foster caring me. She's relaxed, he's relaxed. She gets pregnant, and she has my brother. A year later, she has my sister. A year after that, she has my brother. And so they had a house full of kids. So the nuns were real concerned that now that they had their own family, would they quote unquote not need me or want me, and so they kind of continue to monitor a lot of that. So I got this feeling of knowing, why are these people coming and spending time with me, talking to me? Why am I different? And so you start asking those questions as a young person. What does that mean? I'm adopted, and trying to understand why my brother, who's 1 year under me, why is he named after my dad? He's a junior and I wasn't. No, so really understanding, and they started explaining it. But then the real piece came. Well, again, we came and got you, and we wanted we wanted to love on you. But I started questioning. Okay, well, Thanksgiving we talk about family. Who do I look like? Where do I come from? And why was I given up for adoption? What did I do? And so those were the questions that started really hitting me in my late grade school areas, in particular in high school. Then it started these real long mental anguish, if you will. Was she a prostitute and she didn't have time and energy? Was she too young? Was she too old? Was she in an interracial relation that wasn't acceptable back then? Was she in love? And again, it was too young. And so I played all these scenarios, and the only way I can get through is I get to a place where I would say, I guess it didn't matter. She had me. And so I can go ahead and move forward, and then I get to another place. I guess it didn't matter. She had me. I had parents who loved me. They were crazy about me, and probably overdid it because they never wanted me to feel like I was different than the rest of the family. But again, there was still that personal piece of, I wanted to know where I come from, why did it happen? All I knew, I was given up for adoption. They had no information. And so that was those challenges. But have supportive parents. You can do anything, you can be anything. And my mother was a teacher, educator, and you couldn't have a bigger fan and supporter than my mother, who came and got me. But she also struggled when I got to college, when I really could not wait to turn 18, because she said, wait till you're 18, I'll help you. We get a private eye and we'll go and do the research. And well, at 17 years old, 11 months, 29 days, Mom, we ready. So tomorrow when I turn 18, we're gonna go. And that just shook her to her core, because well, you didn't think I was a good mom? Why do you? And again, it was her way of saying, I love you. I want to protect you. You don't know what you're gonna find. And I get all that, but this is my journey. And so I had to start trying to do that work without her knowing it. And I would go to my grandmother, and guess what my grandmother did? Rabbi, she wouldn't told my mother. So again, it was just a way for them to kind of keep me and protected. Well, I couldn't get any information. All the information was locked and sealed in the file, because adoptions back then were closed adoptions. You couldn't have any information. And about 8 years ago, it all unlocked for me. The laws changed in Illinois. They said if you were ever adopted in the state of Illinois, you can have access to your original birth certificate. I'm thinking, wow, if I get my original birth certificate, oh my gosh, I would know. I can read on there who my birth parents are, let them know I'm okay. Whatever happened, you made this loving choice. I'm here. You got grandkids and great grandkids. And well, it took them months to send it to me, because they were overwhelmed by the number of people that were looking for their original birth certificate. When I finally got it, it said, this is your foundling birth certificate. The Rabbi, I got three kids, and I know what the birth certificate looked like, but this one said foundling birth certificate. I didn't know what that was. I had to look up the word, and it said, you were found, you were abandoned, you were found on this day. And that just really hit me, because I said, found on that day, that's the day I celebrated as my birthday. Nope, that's just the day you were found. Wow. You were found at this day by this man at this address, and you're receiving an orphanage by this doctor. And it took me about 2-3 weeks just to let all that marinate. I'm 45, 46 years old, and to be told that the day you've been celebrating all your life as your birthday is just the day you were found. So I got on, all right, how can I find a doctor who accepted me into the orphanage? I did the research, found him. He had died in 1999. And then I said, I wonder, can I find the guy who found me? And I did this research and looking for a Caesar Johnson in the state of Illinois, and it was a bunch of them, except for 90% of them were younger than me. So I know it couldn't be any of them. Three names left, and the very first number I called, it was the guy who found me. He was 80 years old, and he shares a story with me that I write in my first book, Saving Joy. One of the coldest days in Chicago, he had just put his wife and kids to bed. He was going to work at night, put his scarf and hat on. And so anyway, so the challenges of trying to figure out who I am, where I come from, why, and why was I giving up, and then to find out not only that I was abandoned. I will tell you one thing that Caesar told me that resonate the rest of my life, and he's passed away a couple of years ago. But I told him the question that you just asked: what were some of those challenges growing up? I said the struggle of trying to figure out why was I giving up, what happened, what did I do, or what kind of situation was she or they in, and the only way I can get through it, Mr. Caesar, as what I called him, was that I would say, I guess it didn't matter. She had me. I guess it didn't matter. She had me. He said, she must have did more than had you. She must have loved you because she put you in a place where you could be found. She could have had you in a plastic bag and left you in the alley, and I would have never found you. You'd have froze. But she put you in a box in front of the apartment complex. And I don't know if she knew I was coming to work that day or coming out that building that night or what have you. But she thought about this. And again, this woman that I've never met, again, I continue to love because she gave me life. She made a loving choice. So
when you look at God's plans, Moses set in a basket in the river.
Wow. Yes.
You're Moses set in a basket in the river.
Wow. Wow.
You're taken into a home that's not your home, and you're raised to be what would ultimately become a great influencer, a lawyer, a man who would continue to remember his humble beginnings so that he would keep adoption at the forefront.
Sure. Yes.
That's set apart and chosen by God.
That's absolutely right.
Because it's those that we met as we were going through our process, which was a very expedited one, but we could see in the counselor's eyes as they counseled in their follow-up a lot of resentment, a lot of anger, improperly placed kids. When I went into full-time ministry, I worked directly with Family and Children's Services, with the courts, and trying to help set up meetings between visiting parents in a neutral location, so our synagogue was a place they could meet. And I met some of the people that were in the foster system because it was a system, and they had calculated out how many dollars they could get per head, and they had a packed out house. They had a litter full of kids, and while mom and dad were eating filet mignon, the kids were eating SpaghettiOs. They found a way to work the system, and that's the way it's going to be whenever there's a system. There's going to be find somebody to work the system. And it wasn't about the kids. It was about, I don't have to go out and get a regular job for the rest of my life. I have a government check coming in.
And the kids suffer. You're exactly right.
And the kids,
You're exactly right.
Kids suffer for it.
I would share that, and I do. I really do wish that there was a resurging of the orphanages, because I think that there's one thing, no matter how benevolent the state government is when they're trying to work through the Department of Health or Department of Children and Family Services, or even what the federal government tries to do in way of support, there's a piece that they can't put on, which is the heart. And when you had orphanages run by, in this case, it was the Catholic nuns and the pastor, priests and all, that was their calling. In fact, it's still downtown Chicago. I go there every year. They call it the homecoming. This is the original home for many kids from the 20s, 30s, all the way up through 73, 74 when they closed it. And so annually they'll, hey, come on back. We're doing an annual celebration, and we get a chance to meet, as I call it, my brothers and sisters who were come there before I was there, or those who came even after I was there. And we just fellowship. We talk and share stories. But when you walk around that place and you see pictures of the babies and the nuns and the minister, and they're having church service, smiling faces, and just because the nuns had made a commitment that if these kids were going to be adopted, we're going to present the best child that we can, and if they never get adopted, they're going to have a good life here. Well, that's a different call than maybe what we see at our state or federal. They got so many kids, and even if they really wanted to, the bureaucracy, the number of kids, they got to keep pushing through it. And so um, your remarks are exactly right, that I think our kids get left behind in this whole Department of Children and Family Services and Department of Health. Not that you don't have good people there, but the system doesn't allow for the heart to come through as best as it can, in way of saying your other orphanages.
I will have to tell you that in 1989, in the state of California, my observation is that I was drilled, grilled, tried, fried, examined,
Yes.
inspected,
Mm,
like no parent who just has a
that's
child
right.
biologically would go through.
That's correct.
The cost to me was about $45,000.
Wow. Wow.
It
Wow.
is an incredibly expensive process. It's
Yep.
punitive, and it is to justify all these departments
Yep.
in order to keep them open and funded. But in the bedroom at 9 months old with the crying baby,
Mm,
they're
mm.
not there with you.
That's right.
You're
That's
drawing
wow.
on your love, your compassion, your patience, your connection, your bond with that child.
Absolutely.
Uh, and so we've made adoption an
Yep.
issue in this nation there's so many barricades, there's so many hurdles.
Yes.
Now, I owned a defense contracting company. I already had federal security clearance.
Right.
And because
And they still.
I was already in the system, I was able to get done in 6 weeks, what would have normally taken a person 6 months.
That's correct.
I knew the county sheriff by name, so I could go to his house and get him to sign the form that said that he's checked my record and there is no. We knew each other.
Defense. Sure. Sure.
But that's not the
No
norm.
criminal record. Yes.
All right?
Yes.
But the classes I had to take,
Yep.
mandatory, uh, that were out of a textbook that was similar to the textbook my mother used in the early 50s, written by somebody that didn't have any children.
Sure.
So none of this was practical advice. None of this was real, but it justified the cost. So you and I, we are brothers in the Lord. We are
That's it.
brothers in the Spirit, and we're brothers in the fact that we have experienced adoption as such an impactful part of our lives. Um, we have to champion this cause and legislation to make it so that the barrier to entry
It's not as.
is
Oh,
broken
sure.
down. And this isn't through subsidies, it's just through the elimination of bureaucracy.
Absolutely.
It's not more money, it's less paperwork.
That's it. I wonder, I think the model across the country has been our goal is to reunite or to bring the kids who are in the system back to their birth parents. And that's a great, lofty, and noble plan, except for, again, if you have a kid who's in the system and they're gone to a foster home 4, 5, 8, 12, 15 times, mom and dad probably should be off the table as far as a reunification. Again, that's not, they gave life to this kid, but clearly a kid in the system and going to foster home to foster home to foster home, they begin to understand love something means something very different. And guess what? They eventually become the same type. They end up reproducing that same type of thing. You tell me you love me as I go to my house 15, 16 times. And so love means and expresses itself very differently as opposed to that nurturing that you would get in a stable family right off the bat, even if there's a foster issue of one or two different homes. But a kid in the system who now they foster out. If after you turn a certain age, you don't have parents standing in line saying, I want a 16, 17-year-old. And so now where do they go and what do they do? And so, yes, the barrier to get a kid has been tremendously almost unreachable. In fact, you have so many people go overseas to get a kid because of how inordinate the bureaucracy is to get a kid here in the U.S. And we got a gazillion kids out here waiting for a loving home. I sit on the state board of the Call. The Call is nationwide. And they work a lot with churches, trying to encourage church members to go back to what we did before this country really got started. And when the country did get started, it was the churches that did the foster care. We were the social welfare. We did the schooling. We took care of the hospitals. We did the widows and orphans. We did all of that. And as time went on, we kind of deferred all that to our government. Again, government can do a lot of things. The challenge that they have is putting a heart on it. And so this reunification to the birth parents, I think, has become the stumbling block. No matter what, they're going to grill the person who wants to come and adopt more than they even do the kid who's just been born to their biological. And that biological is either, whether it's meth or some of these things, they've got a stranglehold on them, and it just passes on to that kid. And these kids don't know anything different. All they want to do is get back to their birth parents. And that becomes a challenge as well.
You know, the first encounter we had was with my partner's daughter coming to me and saying she was pregnant and she wanted me to adopt the child. And I found out in California I can't have a conversation with a birth mother. I have to have an attorney and an agency acting it. Otherwise, it would appear like I was trying to purchase a child, and of course that is human trafficking. So,
right.
You know, being the kind of person I am, I was like, let me back away, get some legal counsel, and we sent her to counseling. Then we sent the father, the birth father, to counseling. Then we sent them to couples counseling, and they then found out what some of their issues were, resolved them, and decided to have the baby and raise the baby themselves. And there's a thriving marriage and a wonderful child, and that was the ultimate goal. So it wasn't our loss; it was a huge gain.
Sure, benefit gain to the kid. Yes.
So,
absolutely.
So there's great benefit in getting involved early in these early pregnancy situations, and abortion certainly is not the answer by any.
That's right.
Any possibility. We're talking with Judge Joseph Wood, author of Adopting Joey, his own story about being a foundling, and some of the ups and downs and experiences that he had in finding his home, and then finding what was important about life, because he had the opportunity to go in a number of directions, not far from the streets of Chicago where he was abandoned. Could have returned, could have joined the gangs, could have done any number of ways, but he chose a different way. And when we come back from break, we're going to find out why he chose the path he chose. So we'll be right back.
Sure.
Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to join me and my special featured guests twice per month with Rabbi Zev Parat and Carl Gallups, and monthly with Dr. Michael Heiser, Dr. Michael Lake, Dr. Timothy Jennings, Dr. Mark Baker, Dr. Jeffrey Johnson, Doctors Michelle and Mark Sherwood, Dr. Kim Moss, Derek Gilbert, Peter Rosenberger, Brandon Gallups, Steve Fair, Stephen Black, and Sean Tabbitt for in-depth insights into Israel, prophecy, the unseen realm, the brain, spiritual warfare, overcoming shame, mysteries of the Bible, prophetic insights, the sensational and the supernatural, caregiving, addiction recovery, understanding the divided heart, same-sex attraction, and much more. We're proud to feature some of the greatest biblical minds from both Israel and around the United States. Check out our featured guest lineup and 24/7 feed on ignitinganation.com or watch by topic on any device with our free apps. If you can't find what you need, you're just not looking in the right place. Follow us on social media and download our free apps today.
With today's smartphone technology, news, information, sports, and entertainment is widely available and almost unbounded. But what about the information that believers in Yeshua are looking for? Well, now there's an app for that. Igniting a Nation now has apps available for Android and iPhone. With our app, you'll gain access to everything you would in our website, from our featured guests to our live streaming shows. Visit Google Play or the Apple Store and download Igniting a Nation's new app today.
Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to join me and Israel's #1 rated guide, Edo Canaan, for our annual Israel trip. Our 2022 trip is now open for registration for our 18th trip to Israel. Our trip will take us from Tel Aviv to the Galilee, down to the Dead Sea, and 4 nights in Jerusalem. You will walk where Yeshua walked and watch the Bible turn from black and white to living color. Visit ignitinganation.com/events and download the registration form today. No, it's not too early to take advantage of our payment plan designed to fit any budget. All of our trips sell out, and we want you to experience this life-changing journey. Registration is now open for April 2nd to 13th, 2022, and we promise you, you will never read your Bible the same way again. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Judge Joseph Wood, author of the book Adopting Joy, chronicling his journey from a wooden box in a blanket to sitting on the bench in Washington County, Arkansas, as municipal judge, Superior Court,
county judge.
County judge. So you're the. If I get pulled over, they take me in to see you.
We'll work with the county sheriff. There you go.
There you go.
Yep.
I will tell you, long ago, back when you had the municipalities, the municipal judge, and you paid the fine right there. Back in the 70s, I lived in Georgia, and I was driving very fast to get to a highway letting, and you had to be there with your bid in a certain time. And I got pulled over, and I said to the officer, I said, listen, are you going to be, how much is the fine? He said $50. And I said, are you going to be here in an hour? And he said, as a matter of fact, I will. I said, well, here's 100. Because I'm going to be speeding on the way back. And so that was back in a day, and the city was Soperton, Georgia, and you had to go to the magistrate in a different town so the officers could collect the fines. And then they had a little envelope they put it in. I said, listen, I'm just going to go ahead and pay it now because I'm going to be speeding on the way back.
I'm coming right back. That's great. That is great. That's good.
So what was it that influenced you to, let's just call it the straight and narrow?
Yeah. Well, again, I had parents who came in and just loved on me. She was an educator. He was a construction worker. And again, I didn't know the impact of those two, but hard work and education were just kind of expected in that household. Mama educator and dad built a large part of the city of Chicago. And so that just became what we saw, what was expected. And so at 10 years old, they go through a divorce. Mom says that, hey, I got to pick up a second job. You need to watch your brothers and sisters. And I'm thinking, in my head, I'm thinking, that's your job. You're the mom. But I never said that out loud because I spent really a life with my mom trying to, a life of gratitude, being thankful. I used to thank her all the time for adopting me. And she would get so angry, so upset. You're my kid. I did everything but birth you. Stop thanking me and all. But I also did not want to take that for granted. So I worked hard in school. I worked hard in the community because I did not want her to ever have a second thought about why we got this kid. And so when she said that I got to get a second job, I started looking and thinking about what can I do. You got gangs in this area. You got a lot of drugs in this area. So I thought of a teen club. I said, if I pull a teen club together, I can make sure all my brothers and sisters are there. Well, it grew so fast because all the parents in that area was looking for a place, a safe place for their young people. And the church ended up giving me keys to the church fellowship hall as a place that I can always come, bring all the kids there. We can sit there, meet, plan. And we plan activities, we plan outings. Next thing I know, I was being invited to come to town hall meetings that the city was having or that area, the neighborhood was having, and I would come in on behalf of the young people and speak on what was going on between the young people. What do we see as problems? What could they be working toward? And again, nothing that I put my hand up to do. Is my mother told me, you got to do something to make sure your brothers and sisters are safe. And so this is what it started. But then she told me, probably my senior year in high school, you will continue to do this in the rest of your life because you need to be involved and active wherever you live. So wherever community, wherever you grow and live, you need to be involved and know what that. And so I just continue to do those types of things. I came back from college, saw some of the same things that was broken in the city and the neighborhood, and ran with the local school council, and got down to Arkansas, and I continue to be involved in those type of feeding the homeless, and involved with the foster care, and never dreamed one day I would be a county judge, let alone the deputy secretary of state, helping work with elections and all that. Those are things I would do outside of working. I worked at Walmart and retail and human resources, a lot of stuff in business, but never thought that someone would say, at that time, the Secretary of State, he had said, hey, if I win this office, will you be my deputy secretary? I'm thinking, you gonna pay me to do this stuff that I already. And so sure enough, he won his election. He brought me in as deputy secretary of state. And so that was running the business commercial services. All businesses in the state had to come to our office. All election processes come through the secretary of state. So I started just living and doing the stuff that I've been doing my whole life.
Now, how did faith play out in your life? Your
Sure.
parents told you they prayed together before they chose you,
Yep.
raised you in the church. They,
Yep.
you had keys to the church. So how did
Yep.
how did that impact you?
Very, very involved in the church. So again, they prayed a lot, hoping. In fact, in her high school year, my mother wrote in her high school yearbook, "I want to be a teacher and I want a house full of kids." Well, she graduated from high school, became a teacher, and 5 years of marriage to my dad, no kids. And she was like, "Something wrong with you?" And he's like, he didn't like coming home from work because building construction, building the city, he was like, "Oh, I'm so exhausted." But she put him back to work because she wanted to get pregnant. And after about 5 years, she said, "Well, let's go to the orphanage and get a little girl." And he was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." They get me and started foster caring me. And like I told you, then she got pregnant. And then had my brother, had my sister, had my, almost like the Lord said, "I'm gonna give you a house full of kids. Go get this one first." But so we were born and raised in, I was brought up in the church. I was altar boy. I spent a lot of time at the Catholic church down the street from the house. My first job was working at that church. In fact, before I went to Iowa State University for college, I got accepted in seminary. I was going to be a Catholic priest. That's how involved and how engaged I was with the church. And but when I got to seminary, within probably 2 months, I said, I really, really want to have kids. I didn't know about the whole marriage thing, but no, I'm also 17, 18 at that time. I was probably just thinking like a 17, 18. So I left the seminary and went on to Iowa State University. And but the church never left me. And so I continued to work and go to church. And undergrad, I went to Catholic church, and I went to the Baptist church. Just very different church settings while I was there. I got back to Chicago, met my wife who was Baptist, and she couldn't understand what was going on in the Catholic. And we started searching for a church home together, and we found one that was Methodist. That was interesting. And then we got to Arkansas, and we found a non-denominational. So for about 23, 22 years, we've been in a non-denominational church, but I've been always involved, always engaged. In fact, I went and got my master's in Christian leadership because I think whoever you are, you show up, and you don't put it off on the shelf on Monday when you get to work. You are who you are. And so we have a great commandment. We got a great commission. And I think it's to, obviously, in my mind, love others as he's loved us, and then make sure you keep your light on so people can see him in you. And so I think that's our call. How do we get out there and just be a good light so others can get a taste and see the fruit of the Lord? And so,
you know, when you hear a story like yours and you compare it to a terminated birth, that's the end of all. That's the end of all potential.
That's it.
There is no possibility.
That's right.
It's a death sentence.
That's correct.
It's terminal. It's it.
That's it.
But there are so many stories like yours of those who have been adopted, who have gone on to do extraordinary things, and the world without you would be, you may be that place where the air, you know, there's a place on a ball.
Yes.
The ball's round. And you play with that ball enough, the ball may get scuffed and it may get worn on one place, but it has no effect whatsoever on the ball's ability to bounce. But there's that one spot, and that's where the air goes in.
Wow.
And if that spot gets damaged, then all the air comes out of the ball.
That's right.
And when we look at this world, and we looked at those who were adopted that made real change, that's where the air goes into that ball. Because there was a chance,
absolutely,
of there not being a Judge Joseph K. Wood.
That's correct.
There was a chance of there not being my daughter.
That's right.
Amanda Lillian Walker, who is now brought into this world, Mila Jane, who is the sweetest baby and has this tender heart and this sweetness. And I was looking at a life that there was no family. All my family would die out, and then it would be me.
That's it.
But I have my daughter. I have my granddaughter.
Yes.
That's my family.
There you go.
And that is enough to keep me, as I get closer to 70, to wanting to do more and be more and be in more, have better health and more engaged, because of this gift that was given to me on October 18th, 1989.
Praise God. Absolutely.
31 years of giving purpose and meaning to my life as to being a father and a grandfather that I never would have had on my own had it not been for the gift of this 16-year-old girl named Heather.
What Rabbi, I tell you that your walk, again, I put you on that same place I put my mom and dad, because how easy would it have been for you to select someone else? We call it being twice adopted in the God's family, but adopted because someone said, not this boy, you say, I want this girl here. How powerful that is, because what would her life been had you not chose her? Again, we have no idea, and God has a plan. He pulls it all together.
In this case, we were chosen. In this case, the birth mother was given 5 albums filled with 5 families, and she could look through the pictures, and based on the write-up and the pictures that were in there, she decided on who she wanted to meet, and then who she ultimately selected. And she
That's
said
awesome.
that she saw our album and the others had nothing on it, so she knew that
Wow.
the people that cared enough to put this in front of her
Mm.
was what got her attention. And
That's awesome.
she was
That's
due in
awesome.
6 weeks, and I had the opportunity to spend every day of those 6 weeks with her, with the birth mother, Heather, taking her to doctor's
Hmm.
appointments and getting her clothes
Yep.
and doing all the things you would normally do, but because this was such an unusual situation, she wasn't a California citizen, she wasn't in the California healthcare system, so it was all, I had to pay for all the doctor's
Right.
visits, the hospital, all of that had to come out of pocket.
Right.
There was no insurance, there was nothing. So it wound up
Wow.
becoming a very expensive process.
Sure.
I used to do a stand-up comedy routine, and I said, "Yes, I have a baby daughter. She was born by C-section. I didn't realize that the C stood for cash."
That's awesome. That's good. That's good.
So she and I
That's
are very, very close, and I went through that period with her where she wanted to search for her birth mother. We told her that 18, it was a closed adoption. I was not in favor of keeping up in touch with the birth mother, giving her annual reports. My wife was. Um, it finally came time. My daughter said, "Okay, I'll meet with her." We set up the meeting. She walked away from the meeting and said, "That's the first and last time I ever want to see that person." Uh,
Wow. Wow.
Now I
Wow.
know why she picked you because,
Yeah.
cause,
She knew she couldn't. That's it.
right.
That's it.
And she has a half sister, but the birth father died of a drug overdose.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
it just wasn't the right. Um,
Sure.
Here's my beautiful daughter, and here's these.
Struggling. That's it.
You're still scraping it out and still doing
Yep.
what they were doing 19 years before when she got pregnant and put herself in that position. But she had the fortitude and she had the guts to tell her parents, "I will not abort," and she ran away. And for
Wow.
that, I will be eternally grateful for that.
Absolutely.
And my daughter
Yes.
has that contrary nature where she'll dig her heels in. So when she says, "Well, I don't know anything about myself. I don't know anything about my parents or anything," I said, "Well,
Right.
I can tell you a lot. You've got the personality. Here's one of your personality traits." Uh, that I saw firsthand.
It's an interesting piece because again, not having any family, you think about those things as adopted, and now that I have kids and grandkids, and you even more so, I think that there's this desire to kind of figure out who you come from, where you come from, why, and this type of thing, and which is some of the reason why I did the book after the law changed and my daughters were like, "Dad, I got 3 daughters. You need to write this down." I'm like, but I still don't know how I got to the stairs. And one morning I got up and started writing. 2 in the morning, I started writing. I wrote 3 books: Leaving Joy, Saving Joy, and Adopting Joy. Leaving Joy is who I thought was my mom, a young teenager who just had a kid. I don't know, but that's what I was thinking it was because I was trying to come up with something for my youngest grandson, whose name is Joey. They named him after me, and I say I can at least tell a story to him so he has some sense of where he comes from since I'm the beginning of the tree. So Leaving Joy is this woman who I thought is 16, pulls blankets off her bed and put me in a basket. I didn't say the wood box or box, which is actually what it was, but I said it was a basket just for because it's a children's book. And Saving Joy was a story I shared about Mr. Caesar, Korean veteran who comes to work and getting ready to leave for work. And then Adopting Joy is a story that I just shared about the parents who came and got me out of the orphanage and started foster caring me. But when the first book, Saving Joy, was done, Joy, my grandson, was running in the house and saw his mom and big brother reading it, and he was probably 3, and he's looking at his mom like something's not right. And she's like, "What's wrong with you?" He said, "You left me out in the cold," because he sees Saving Joy, and that's his name, and his big brother kind of razzes him a little bit. He said, "No, this is Grandpa Dad." He said, you and Grandpa Daddy had the same name, and they called him Joey too. He said, no, that doesn't say Joy, the Grandpa Daddy. That says Joey. He knows his name, and they helped him get through that. And all of a sudden, they left Grandpa Daddy out in the cold. That's how he was. And so for him, and now he's 8 years old, 9 years old. He'll be 9 in December. I'm his biggest fan. Everybody in his school knows about his Grandpa Daddy, the book, and all. So you talk about the story and the lineage and the impact, the rippling impact that one loving choice, her deciding to have me, whatever the circumstance, I still don't know, by her having me, it caused Caesar's world to change, and it caused my world to change, obviously. This woman and man who had been married for 5 years couldn't have any kids. Oh, they get one kid in the house, and next thing you know, now they got 4 or 5. So
this was, this is God's blessing. We think that closed womb is a curse, and in this case, a closed womb was an opportunity for God to do His best work after the child that had the need. Anybody can make a child. Anybody can make a child.
That's right. That's correct.
But to choose to love another child, and as most of the women's books say, you didn't grow under my heart, you grew in it.
That's right. Wow. Love it.
The bond is unbreakable.
That's correct.
And the words spoken by the judge, that this child is entitled to every God-given right as if they were your natural born child.
Wow. Wow.
It's the law of the land.
That's right.
That's the decree. Right. And as they gave me the new birth certificate with my name as the father.
That's right. That's right.
I tucked away the original birth certificate, and when my daughter said she wanted it, I gave it to her. It had a different first name on it, and we found out that the birth father's name was fictitious, so it took us 9 months to prove that he didn't exist, and that extended the process. But there are so many things. There are actually still laws on the books from World War II. You can't terminate a father's rights if he's in the military because he may be in battle, and therefore you have to go through the adjutant general.
Wow.
We're not in World War II anymore, but yet the law, law has not been updated. Therefore, you have to involve the United States Army. And of course, the Army is going to tell the soldier, you don't say that you're the dad. You don't want that responsibility. Even if it was, we're going to help you get out of this where you're not going to be paying child support, and they're not going to be coming after us for all this. You can,
exactly right.
You can step out of this, but they have to give you 6 more months. So for 9 months, we had the agony of not knowing if she was going to be taken away. That was heartbreaking for me.
Wow. Yes.
Heartbreaking for me. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. We could talk for a great deal of time about the beauty and the benefit and the blessing and the need for adoption reform in America to streamline the process so that people are encouraged not so much to foster, but to adopt, right? And to take some of the bureaucracy. This is a swamp that does need to be drained and refilled with clean water, and using what we know now about the proper fostering and loving of children with the goal towards adoption, or just straight out adoption agencies working with foster families. God bless you, my friend, and thank you for sharing Adopting Joy. It's a story that every parent should tell their child, because they may very well face the opportunity in their adulthood.
That's exactly right.
And their schools aren't teaching them.
No.
So the only way they're going to hear about it is through this.
Well, I go to schools and I do a lot of talking to schools and sitting down, and I know long after I'm gone, because there'll be a kid who say, I'm in foster care, I was adopted, and the other kids don't know what that is. And so long after I'm gone, I know they're having organic conversations about that. Pastor Rabbi Walker, thank you for having me. To your listeners, appreciate you guys. God bless you guys. Keep igniting the nation.
Thank you. God bless you. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.